Hi, I'm a higher ed CMO and I have a confession to make. Reporting was not my favorite part of the job. And yes, I definitely understood how important reporting was. I always found it to be kind of like pulling teeth to get the data together. And often it felt like you were putting in a lot of effort for something only a few people read. That said, my mind got changed after I worked for Danny Kemp at Radford University. He really stressed how important reporting was in telling the story of the work that you've done and in continuing to build trust and to make people across your campus understand the impact of the work that you're doing. And so, who better to talk about reporting than Kerry Salerno, who is Babson College's Chief Marketing and Communications Officer? She's absolutely brilliant. At Babson, she oversees brand, reputation, and enrollment marketing and communication strategies. And she's responsible for building brand awareness, engagement, adoption, and advocacy for the institution and each of its revenue generating programs, as well as overseeing institutional communication strategies. I feel so lucky to have met Kerry and to have the opportunity to have her come on the show and talk about the impact reports that she creates annually for her campus, but also to talk about some of the ways that she's structured her team for greater agility and to allow them to be more innovative and creative. I hope you enjoy the show. You're listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, the podcast where marketing minds in higher ed come to pull back the curtain, spill a little tea, and talk honestly about what it takes to market in this industry. I'm Jaime Hunt, the founder of Solve Higher Ed, author of Heart Over Hype, and a former campus CMO who spent more than 2 decades navigating the weird, wonderful world of higher education marketing. This show is for the strategists, the storytellers, the change agents, and anyone who has ever tried to get Faculty Senate on board with a rebrand. Here we get candid about the challenges and share the ideas that are shaping the future of our field. Sound like your kind of conversation? Then let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Kerry. It's great to have you. How are you?
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, so what sparked this whole conversation was back in, I think, June, Kerry did a PRSA Counselors to Higher Education webinar about the impact report that her teams puts together that sort of details what their department or division have done over the last year, some of the metrics, a lot of KPIs, a lot of great storytelling. And I just thought, we need to have Kerry on the show to talk this through. So thank you so much for being willing to share this. I would love for you to kind of explain better than I just did what your impact report is and why you put it together.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Jaime. It's been a hot topic. My colleague Danielle Perry and I have been sort of having this conversation with higher ed marketers over the last year. We were fortunate enough to um, present at AMA last year on the same topic. And then, as you said, at PRSA a few months ago. And we're having great conversations with lots of colleagues across the industry. It's definitely a hot topic. So I think first and foremost, the most important piece for us on the impact report is that the report itself is an annual celebration of the impact that marketing has made on the college's goals and what we call critical few objectives. But more importantly, we have a data-driven culture within Babson's marketing team, and that's been something that we've been growing and really cultivating over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. And so the impact report is an annual snapshot, but it's actually built off of a quarterly dashboard, which sets our KPIs that we're tracking on a quarterly basis and reporting into the president, whom I report to, and our leadership team. So for us, really the impact report is that like annual opportunity to produce something really exciting and important and share with our stakeholders. But on a more frequent basis, we are really focused on building that data-driven culture within the team so that we are able to think about the activities that we're doing and how they align with the college's goals.
And this is like a 30-page report, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
What KPIs are you tracking in the report?
Yeah. So we have 3 sort of larger buckets of KPIs, kind of 3 areas of focus. I think it's best to think about what our team is responsible for. Their awareness and reputation, engagement, and then enrollment or revenue as we would think about it. And so um, on the dashboard, those are the categories that we are tracking. Those are the areas that the college marketing team is looking to make impact on over the life of a, academic year. Where's our awareness and reputation sit? Who's engaging with our brand, and how are we impacting enrollment or revenue? We'll look at those as a series of KPIs underneath each category. We'll look at those again pretty frequently, look at where our opportunities are, where we might be seeing some challenges. And then in the annual report, we'll decide what are the top most highest level KPIs that we want to really focus on reporting out to the community.
How do you decide when you have so many KPIs to choose from? How do you decide which ones are the most impactful?
Yeah. So I love that, one of the lessons that we've learned over time is that not everyone's a marketer, though lots of people think they are, right? And we really focus on trying to move away from the marketing jargon, and really think about what are those measures that we can be most confident in. We are understanding the impact that we're having, or that the audience is going to understand the impact that we're having. So an example I would give you is, when we think about awareness and reputation, right? We are thinking about things like our rankings, what our reputation might be amongst media or, faculty, the academy. And so we'll look at KPIs that are really focused on earned media, so that we can understand, does Babson have the right amount of share of voice in conversations in the media that allow us then to make some, sort of correlation to where our awareness and where the reputation is of the college.
I love that. I'm looking at right now, I have open in front of me your Google Trends report that showed that your Wall Street Journal #2 ranking caused a gigantic spike. And you provide a little bit of context for that. And I'm really impressed throughout the full report how much context you're providing. You're not just saying like, here's the increase, but you're contextualizing it. Is that something you found over time is really necessary for the sort of non-marketing audiences that you're giving this to?
For sure. I mean, it goes back to, not everyone is a marketer, right? And so when we put a stat in the book or when we report out a stat, we're trying to really make sure that we provide that context to the audience that we're reporting to. So, in this particular case, the annual report that we produce it for the board, we produce it for the president's leadership team, we share it with colleagues across campus. So it's a variety of audiences, right? And so really important for us is to provide that context to why we chose the stat or the KPI in the book, and then what that stat or KPI might look like. So in some cases, you might see context like, year over year. What was that stat KPI last year as opposed to this year, so that we can give our audience a benchmark? You might see a KPI reported in context of what's happening in the market. So to your point, we were fortunate enough to be named #2 by the Wall Street Journal last year in September of 25. And so when you look at our metrics year over year, we've had incredible impact from that opportunity. And so really making sure that the audience understands that there was a moment in time, there was some sort of effect that happened as we're looking at our KPIs, that we are correlating those outputs to.
I love that. And this kind of makes me think about the idea of what I talk about in my book, where you're giving, not just features, you're giving the context for why that feature matters to a prospective student. And you're really just deploying that kind of strategy across another entirely different marketing tool for an entirely different audience, but it's that same sort of thing, right? That you're providing this context as to why you should care. Like, why should you care that you've had, 104.3 million impressions on paid media or whatever? Like, what does that actually mean when you're flipping through this book? Because I think it would be very easy to just make this a numbers only report. And you mix a lot of storytelling in here. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so the Babson College's marketing team mission is to really tell the stories of Babson College, to bring the experience to life through all of the vehicles that we deploy. So for us and the marketing team leadership, it's really important to tie back the stories that we tell back to our mission and why we're telling them, and show that impact, right? So trying to bring alive some of the ways that we are personifying, the prospective student journey. We spend a lot of time as marketers thinking about that journey, right? What are the emails we're writing? How are they engaging with us on social media? Who are the influencers that are helping students make their decisions? And we have a whole series of communication plans and marketing plans around all of those audiences. That's a lot of time for our team, for our teams, for our writers, for our content folks to be spending. And so for us, this annual report, it's equally important, right, for our team to see themselves in the work that we're doing. Yes, we're reporting out to the board and the president and others within our community, but also it's important for the marketing team to have this moment each year to really look at the work that they're doing and say, I understand how the stories that we're writing, we're cultivating, we're telling over time are connecting to impact within the community, impact within, our awareness and reputation, impact within our enrollment and our revenue. So, if we really think about this book as a storytelling opportunity and trying to mix in some of those stories that have already been told, we're not creating new stories, we're not creating new work for this book, but really looking back at that annual journey and trying to decide, what are the stories that we told, and how do we connect them into those measures and those KPIs that we're reporting out here.
Now, I imagine that this is a lot of work to put together. And I'm reflecting back on my time before I was a chief marketing officer or a vice president. And I had a vice president that really instilled in us that these annual reports of our impact were our opportunity to sell the work that we're doing and to really make the case for why we're a worthy investment of university resources. And he really was like, this is super, super important. But I've worked with teams before since then that are like, this is just another to-do list, another thing on the that we have to put together. And it's kind of like the cobbler's children don't have any shoes. Like we don't, it's like, oh, selling ourselves is a luxury we don't have time for. How do you motivate your team to want to
Yeah.
participate in this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle. I believe that these are an important opportunity for teams to do just what your former VP said, right? An opportunity to sell ourselves, to celebrate what we've done with the year. But full disclosure, real transparently, we don't have time to do things just for the sake of doing them. For us, and I would go back to sort of the roots of this, right? The report is what gets people excited, and it's shining and it's beautiful. And if you've seen a copy of it, it's just, I think it's a terrific piece of work. But it's the culmination of building that data-driven culture within the community, within our team, that started when I first arrived at Babson. So I've been at Babson for 7 years, and really the focus has been building a data driven marketing organization. So we've done everything from changing the way that our workflow happens. We've moved into an agile practice where we've become more of an agile team, more of a nimble team, allowing ourselves to prioritize differently. That sort of floated into really thinking about what kind of resources we needed on the team. So years ago, when there was openings from just natural attrition, I made a decision to bring on a marketing analyst. So we do have a dedicated marketing analyst on the team, a director of marketing analytics within our team. And then she partners with folks in enrollment and IT. So we have those kinds of resources. But again, they've been built over time and made choices about open roles to be able to repurpose. And then that led to the development of our quarterly dashboard. So I mentioned this before. That's really what's at the heart of this annual report. So for us, this isn't we start this at the end of a certain time period, and it takes us about 8 to 12 weeks to produce. And, we have to go and find all of the data. all of the data is available because we're looking at it almost on a weekly, daily, quarterly basis, if you will. We report up on a quarterly basis, or I report up on a quarterly basis to the president. My leadership team here in college marketing is looking at the dashboard on a quarterly basis. We report into the full marketing team on the dashboard and those KPIs on a quarterly basis. And then on a campaign level, on an individual project level, each of our teams within college marketing are identifying those KPIs that they might be looking at on a campaign level. So really we've been building this data-driven culture over time so that the production of a report isn't as much of a heavy lift. It certainly takes resources. We build those resources in, but for us, the report is a celebration, really a culmination of, in an academic year, all of the focus that we put on building that data-driven culture.
How do you use the data at those quarterly milestones?
I actually think that's the most helpful part of the journey that we've been on, because the dashboard and the data that we look at that point, again, it's in sort of these three categories, right? Awareness, reputation, brand engagement, and enrollment. And so, when we're looking at, for example, awareness and reputation, we're looking at things, as I mentioned, mentions in media. We're not looking at impressions, we're looking at mentions. And so, what are those trending up or down? Is there something that's, like I mentioned around the Wall Street Journal, is there some sort of factor that's impacting where Babson's brand is, where Babson's earned media opportunities are in that moment in time? And how does that compare with where we were year over year? So in those dashboard reviews, we're taking a look at trends. We're taking a look at sort of year over year markers to understand, was there anything point in time last year that was impacting or helping us make a decision on why we might be seeing a certain trend this point in time. And then we're using that to help us look ahead. So, we might be seeing, for example, we're doing a lot of work with SEO and trying to understand the impact of AI and SEO, as is everybody else, right? And so, what are the impact of things like, our efforts to have keywords ranked on page one, and where do we need to put resources in to maybe improve that number or that KPI over the next quarter? So, for us, it's really helping us look forward and then taking that snapshot in time and help us determine, do we need to shift priorities? Do we need to be putting different emphasis on different parts of the organization in the next quarter?
I really want to plus one having a data analyst on your team as being something that is so life changing. I had one when I was at Miami, and he would surface things to us based on data like, hey, I'm noticing that the load time on these really critical pages has gone way up, and we're getting a lot of bounces off this page. I think we need to look into that. And it was so helpful because we could have waited. Once a year, look at like the year over year numbers, but having somebody who lives in that space and is watching for those kinds of potential markers of trouble. What I would hate to see, particularly as zero-click search is becoming even more and more of an issue, is for somebody listening to this to only look at their analytics reports once a year and see, oh no, we've dropped off by 40% or something like that, and then try to address it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on, that resource has been just indispensable for our team, because that role is helping us do exactly what you just said, which is look forward, right? Look, understand what's happening in the moment and help us sort of look forward and understand, what's in that number, unpack that number and understand what are the trends, what's the analysis, and how do we make decisions moving forward. For us, the other important piece I would say though is that it's a what we have found is most valuable is it's a pair between that dedicated resource and building that data-driven culture within the organization. So yes, we have somebody that's setting the KPIs and helping us think through the analysis and elevating and raising those trends and those challenges and opportunities when they see them. But it also has become sort of part of our culture for individuals to be thinking in that data-driven mindset as well. So I'll give you an example in our social engagement. sort of this past year, we were seeing some, stronger engagement on channels and some declining engagement. So in our case, we were seeing some declining engagement on Instagram, and really trying to understand what was driving that, and where were the opportunities for us to maybe shift up our types of content that were producing maybe better results, either in the quarter before, or that we were seeing on other channels. So that's really an opportunity for us, making sure that our social manager, who's not our data analyst, right? So that person's really thinking about social media, but building that expectation of understanding the data, understanding what the data is telling us, is really important into a role like social media, because they compare with the marketing analyst, and together they can identify the trends and opportunities within that space that the social manager knows better than anyone.
How did you build this data-driven culture? Was it there when you got there?
No, it definitely was not here when I got here. And to be fair, I think it's a culture that's been building in higher ed marketing
Mhm.
over the last 7-10 years or so. I mean, I've been in higher education marketing for the majority of my career, and while data has always been an important topic, I don't think it's been built into marketing teams in the way that I've seen it being built into teams over the last number of years. Resources are getting tighter, marketing's changing, tools are changing, and we just need to be better at understanding the impact that our teams are having. So, how did we build it here? It really started, as I said, with sort of the evolution of the team, understanding what roles we needed, understanding what types of folks we were trying to bring on the team to sort of modernize and build those skills and capacities. Digital folks, folks that had more experience in SEO, as I mentioned, and certainly media experience as well. And then really what we focused on, we started from our inside out. So we really focused on understanding each other as a team. And we did a lot of work with our HR group and our learning and development folks to understand what are the thinking styles of the team, and how do you lean into your own thinking style and understand others' thinking style. Really, that was a aha moment for me as a leader to say, we all have the ability to think analytically, right? Some it's more predominant than others, some are stronger in that than others, but it's all within us. And so we went on this sort of campaign to sort of bring more blue into the team, if you will. And that wasn't only just through new hires, but that was through involving those that had been here, either when I came or after I hired, to bring more of that in an analytical perspective. So we did things like invest in professional development, make sure that our folks are skilled up in the sort of analytical perspective of their own sort of individual discipline. So if you're a content producer, if you're a social media manager, if you're a video producer, we looked at professional development opportunities for those kinds of folks to go out and be with their peers, but understand how to be thinking more analytically about the work that they're doing. If you're a writer, helping our writers think about, the SEO efforts of the stories that they're telling, so that they could tie their stories directly back to engagement. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey. It's a continued journey for us, where we continue to evolve and invest and really build that blue culture. But I'm proud to say we have more than one blue person on the team these days.
Southeast Missouri State University needed to launch more targeted campaigns faster, yet they were bogged down by manual campaign builds, slow approvals, and vendor overload. With Element 451, they eliminated 5 vendor tools and gained marketing superpowers in one platform. They saw a 13% increase in applications, processed applications within 2 days, and achieved 30 to 35% email open rates. The impact was personalized, automated campaigns running at scale without the drag. Ready to churn your next campaign around in hours, not weeks? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. That's great. And that sort of speaks to something that I say quite often, which is that we have to stop hiring for fit, because I think when we hire for fit, we hire people like us. And so you have like, this is our team, and I don't know if they'll fit in here. Well, maybe that's a good thing, like a different way of looking at things. I know my most innovative team was made up of an almost 50-50 split of like very like big picture, creative, big idea people and very analytical people. And I think I've talked about this before, but there was that push pull where the very creative people wanted to just run with something. And the analytical people were like, hold up, we need to make sure this is going to work. And everybody kind of resented each other. I'm not going to lie. But as I write in my book, like sometimes that tension is really good because you're actually getting both sides of the brain, so to speak. I think that's been debunked, but you're getting that dual way of approaching a problem. So I love that you've built up your team to have more blue people. Are you like screening for that during interviews or?
We talked about early on screening, but it's more about, certainly we did some work around addressing questions to understand sort of thinking styles and predominant thinking styles in the HR process. But it's really more about leaning in, as you said, we have those, whether it's both sides of the brain or all forward thinking styles, whichever way you think about it, we all have that within us, and it's really understanding how to bring that forward if it's not predominant in you. So I'll be honest, I am not a blue thinker, and when we did this work, I am squarely in the green. I am the one that's, gonna drive the work and get it done, and I know how to do that. And so for me, over time, it's been, where do I need to lean into elevating that more analytical thinking and approach to my own work to be able to, help impart the team's impact. So for us, it's really been about investing in the folks that we have, and bringing that analytical thinking forward. But to your point, hiring for fit is, it's that is the key. It's really about understanding how the new person's going to fit within the team. This is one component of it.
I'm going to give away for free my interview question that I used to ask to kind of expose how people think. And I can give it away now because I don't work at a university, and nobody listening is probably going to interview with me for a job because I am a consultant now. But I would ask people, and in full disclosure, I got this idea from my husband. If I were to ask you to figure out how much toilet paper we needed to buy to cover the entire state of Rhode Island in toilet paper, how would you approach that project? And it is so eye-opening to see how people tackle that. And my husband actually had somebody like basically flip a table and say, "This is a stupid question. I don't want this job anyway." Which it's better to find out
And then
somebody's
you
going to
don't
be
hire that person. That's
right.
right.
Right. You dodged a bullet, I think there. But I
Mhm.
mean, to me, that question has been so eye opening into how people think. And I actually had someone email me afterwards the calculation. Like they actually
Wow.
went and calculated how much toilet paper it would take. And I was like, I bet $1,000,000 that person's blue. Like
That's right.
they had that analytical mind all the way.
That's
Um,
right. That's right. Well, that's gold for anyone that's listening. That is a secret question. That is gold from Jamie. So I'm scratching that down, and we'll use that next time.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. Pretty soon, like everybody is going to just like walk into interviews
That's
armed with that answer to that question. Like, oh, I know it's
I know.
874,000 roles or something like that. But it really is eye opening into how people think. And remember, I did have one person say, well, the first thing I would ask is, why are we doing this? And I was like, you're a genius and you're hired. Like that is in fact the first question.
Well, that's funny because in my mind, I was thinking, well, what are we trying to achieve with this question, Jamie? So,
You're
what's
hired.
the goal? Yeah, I'm
I
hired.
love it. So circling back to
Yeah.
non-toilet paper related topics, I'm really curious, how long does it take your team to pull this all together?
Yeah, so it's about an 8 to 12-week process, but that's because we build it in over time. As I said, this isn't a hair on fire, has to be done at a certain time kind of project. And so for us, we work on an agile workflow. So we have sort of 4 smaller agile teams operating across the whole team on an annual basis. And so we really make sure that everyone in the whole team touches this book. And I know that sounds labor intensive, and I know that sounds maybe like a, waste of resources. I assure you it's not. It actually comes right back to what we've been talking about, which is this impact report is a celebration of the entire team's sort of impact on the college's goals. So that might mean that, for example, this year we tried something different and we have 4 designers within my group, and the 4 designers split up the sections, and each one designed a section. So, that's a way that they can have their impact. They can impart their design opportunities on the book, and not one person is responsible for producing the entire design set. So for us, we intentionally make it about like I said, 8 to 12 week project. At the last quarterly review, which is probably around like March or so, we try to then map out the time frame so that the final quarter, end of June, beginning of July timeframe, is when we deliver both the last quarterly dashboard of the year as well as the impact report.
Because you're a data-driven team, I
Yeah.
imagine that you are trying to measure whether the reports are effective. And I would love to hear how you're measuring that. And is it effective? Is this something that, I mean, you're obviously spending a great deal of time putting this together. So you must be finding it effective, but in what ways?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I've said so much about the journey and the focus on data, and I continue to sort of reinforce that. But at the end of the day, sometimes your gut just needs to lead, right? And so, for us, this is a little bit of a gut driven piece, meaning, we sort of use our guts, if you will, to determine the effectiveness. It is given to our board of trustees as an opportunity for them to review when it hits the streets in July. And then they get a hard copy of it again at our annual at our fall board meeting in October. Some of that data is pulled into the board meeting in October. So KPIs related to engagement or how we're partnering with admissions and enrollments sort of pulled into different parts of the board meeting. And so, in terms of effectiveness and sort of shaping perception within the board, I can tell you that, that's sort of to be honest, a gut driven result, which is there's a lot of positive feedback. There's a lot of, sort of gratitude for us being able to report the effects on the brand. There are certainly opportunities that I've had over the last couple of years to be able to use the data, not just the report, but the data that we've been collecting to have conversations about additional investments or additional opportunities to add resources. For me, the book itself is really in that celebratory sort of trying to shape perception of the marketing team, and how, to be honest, how professional and modern and, sophisticated we are as a team, and that feedback often isn't as analytical, but it's really positive.
And I think it's really, really important because maybe you're making big changes to the team. You're trying to professionalize a team. You're building up skill sets. You're trying to get ever more sophisticated with the work that you do. Having your campus community understand that, and that you might be doing things in a different way because you've professionalized, but look at these amazing results that you're getting. It is so easy to back burner those types of projects. Getting that buy-in from your campus leads to more openness, I think, of people to working with you, people being more transparent about some of the comms things that they're doing because they want to get your input because you're doing a fantastic job. I mean, there's myriad
That's
ways
right.
that something like this is helpful, I think.
And I would say, Jamie, that we have tremendous partners across the organization, and that's such an important point because this data is about impact on the college's brand, and we, the marketing team, sort of are stewards of that brand, right? But the entire campus are brand ambassadors, and are responsible for the brand itself. And so if you think about, our work with enrollment, or our work with our partners in student success, or our partners in IT. I mean, there's just a variety of opportunities that we've had over the years to be able to celebrate those partnerships, and to your point, really show that we're approaching marketing differently here. It is a strategic support for the institution. We are not an agency model. We don't sort of that service mentality, if you will. And so for us, it's really an opportunity for us to celebrate those partnerships too, and those opportunities where we have that strategic conversation up front. We're talking about what we're trying to achieve, and then we're able to show what we achieved together.
I think people are going to probably send me letters if I don't ask you to tell me more about your agile team structure, because we have talked about it before, and I
Yeah.
think it's fairly unique in higher ed. And I actually used your structure as an example for somebody else I was talking to. But tell us what you mean by an agile team.
When I arrived at Babson, one of the sort of aha moments was that for me, and this was back in 2018, that the team itself, really phenomenal group of professionals, very skill based, very discipline based, and very siloed, doing great work, but sort of in this workflow, this waterfall workflow. I will touch the document once the person before me touches that document, and sort of went down that waterfall. One of the other aha moments for me in that first year was really, sort of the team mentality or mission, if you will, and really trying to identify what was marketing to BAPS. And so I mentioned previously, we think of ourselves as a strategic support to the institution. Marketing is a service, of course, right? But for us, we needed to shift that service mentality, that sort of service component. If you're an agency, you fill out the form, you sort of get the work and the flow, and you complete the work, right? For us, we really need to shift that approach to being much more of a strategic resource for the organization, asking what are we trying to achieve, what are our goals, what are the optimal outcome for these kinds of projects. So that whole sort of process, if you will, was really building an agile mindset. So but when we talk about agile here at Babson, we talk about it as a mindset first, sort of shifting that mindset for the team, thinking about ourselves as more agile, more nimble, more resilient, having those conversations about what's working, what's not working. And then we went from agile mindset to agile process, which was really about, if we're more agile, if we're more nimble, if we're more resilient as a team, what do we need to do to shift our process to allow for that? So we did a lot of research. I had a really phenomenal resource here at the time who was in her MBA program, and she and I did a lot of conversations about, what do business operations look like as the teams that need to be more agile. And the agile workflow process sort of was born here at Babson. Our IT department had used it. It sort of is more traditionally seen in IT. We brought in some external help to help us understand how to apply agile into marketing. And we've been running an agile workforce and an agile environment for 7 years. So we take the team, which is about 30 people overall, and we break that team down into four smaller teams that are business unit aligned. They are sort of working through objectives that are aligned at a sort of, next level, if you will. So one might be focused on brand, one might be focused in our enrollment spaces, but really sort of bringing together that self motivating and intrinsically motivating group of folks that are working and aligned with specific goals. It could be its own discussion in itself. I know, there's a lot of there are other folks that are running agile environments across higher education, and I think we're all doing it slightly differently. But at the end of the day, the goal is really to build out these teams that are really thinking about prioritizing, about building, minimal viable products to get to market faster, to be more agile, to understand what market influences we need to bring into our conversations, and to use data to help us make decisions.
I absolutely love this model. I think this is something that it speaks to something I've been saying for years, which is we have to move away from this agency model.
Yeah.
That was all the rage when I first started working in higher ed. It was better than sort of the like truly copy shop approach to running the office, and it got things moved in the right direction. But I think the idea of like we need to move into being a strategic value add to the institution and not order takers, and not like we have to stop calling people clients. We have to stop
Patent.
calling like we're all working towards the same goal.
That's
We're
right.
partners in achieving that.
That's
Um,
right. That's right. I banned the use of clients. I mean, my team would probably laugh if they're listening to this right now. That was one of the first things I said is, we're colleagues, not clients. I will tell you, when one of my first experiences at Babson, one of my own colleagues at the time when I first arrived said, Kerry, your team thinks like an agency. They act like an agency. What they don't understand is agencies can be fired. And so you got to get in there and you got to help, sort of shift the mindset. And that was a really important moment in time for me because, exactly what you said there is this sort of shift from service mentality to strategic support for the organization. And so, asking those questions like, what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? What if we just had this really tremendous session with you, Jamie, a couple of weeks ago, which helped us sort of as our team kind of continue to evolve this sort of big thinking approach, innovative approach, and asking our partners, what if, right? And being able to enter those conversations rather than, what do you need? What do you need to buy? And, what do you want in the cover?
I'm a big believer that the only thing that you need to have on your quote unquote intake form is what is your goal?
That's
And
right.
obviously name, email, department, that kind of stuff. But, I've seen so many that are like a checklist of tactics. Why is the client, and I'm using that term intentionally because that's what that approach is. Why is the client determining what the tactics are? You should be partnering with your campus partner to determine those tactics using your expertise as a marketer. I would rant about this for an hour and a half if I could. And I can't believe we didn't know each other before a
I
couple months
know.
ago when we're so
I
aligned on
know.
this.
Let's do another conversation on that because I could rant about that for a whole nother hour as well. But what I will say to you is bringing it, back to the data piece around this topic is this was also a really important shift. I've talked about the journey of our team, right? But this was a really important shift for folks within the team that were here when I arrived and that continued and stayed with me through this journey. So, moving from that, what tactic do you want us to do to what tactic is going to work for this goal, this strategy. And that's where the data became really important, right? Because now we had the data in our hands to be able to go more confidently to our partner, not our client, but our partner, and say, here's what we recommend. Instead of doing it this way, or instead of writing the story this way, we're going to write it this way. And this is why, because our data is telling us that, this is the right approach. So that was it's all sort of tied together from shifting from this agency mentality to this more agile workforce, bringing in that data driven culture. So it's all tied together in the conversation here at Babson.
I love that. And folks, if you want to listen to Kerry, you're going to be at AMA, right? The good news is you're going to be at AMA. I'm going to be at AMA. The bad news is we're presenting at the same time. I'm so bummed out.
I don't know. We'll have some folks in each session and record, but I am going to be at AMA. I'm super excited about that.
What are you presenting on?
I am presenting with our partner Viv. We have been doing some great work on bringing more of a human sort of approach into a lot of our advertising and our messaging. And so we have a case study that actually was born last year when I was sitting with our partner Suzanne Brinker, and her team was presenting at the time. And my idea was sparked in that session, and we'll see how it came full circle this year. But I will also say my colleague here, Danielle Perry, who's our AVP of Communication Strategy, will also be presenting at AMA. She presented with me last year on this topic on our annual report, and she's presenting on a crisis panel with our PR firm. So I'm really excited about these two opportunities. I think that's just a great experience for us to all come together and share all of our best practices across higher.
I love AMA. I think it's just the best higher ed conference. And I'm so bummed that I don't get to see you guys. I'm so bummed about that. But I'm sure I'll have fun doing my presentation at that same time. There's just so much content that you feel like I can't even fit this all in. Everything I want to go to.
I know.
It's just
I
a
know.
fabulous problem to have.
Too.
If folks have questions for you or, want to track you down and ask you more about agile teams or how you do reporting, where can people find you?
Yes, find me on LinkedIn, Kerry Salerno. Really easy to find, but also ksalerno@babson.edu. Shoot me an email, and if we're at AMA together, we'd love to connect.
I love that. And folks, as always, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt, JaimeHunt, or on my website, solvehighered.com. And you can find my book at heartoverhypebook.com. And I always love to hear from listeners, so feel free to reach out. And until then, let's go bust some silos. Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and contact drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.